what I was going to do on this video tonight, and I was talking to someone today about doing the videos, and I was talking to them about shame. And I'm not ashamed of my past. I'm not ashamed of choices that I've made. I'm not ashamed of the mistakes that I've made. I'm not ashamed of what happened to me. But I had to work on that. I had to work on the shame, because there was a time when I was ashamed of what happened. I was ashamed of the men that I'd had relations with. I was ashamed of the volume of men I'd had relations with. I was ashamed of my mum and her addictions. I was ashamed of the person that I had become from the family that I was raised in. I was ashamed of how many jobs I went through. I was ashamed of a lot of the decisions and choices that I'd made along the way. And I don't really have that shame anymore. I'm not ashamed of any of that. I haven't necessarily moved into pride. I'm not proud of it. I can't say I am not someone that's sitting here saying, I'm so glad I had the family I had because they've made me who I am today. I don't sit in that space yet. So I'm not proud of my upbringing, but I'm not ashamed of it either. I'm somewhere in the middle where it is what it is. It was what it was. And that's okay. I'm okay with it. I have moments where I still get angry and I still get frustrated and I still get annoyed. But that's not from my past as much as it is from how I am behaving now because of my past. And it's kind of a difference. But I still don't have any shame over that. So I wanted to share a couple of layers I went through with the shame, just in case anyone happens to be watching this video and wants to deal with their shame. You'll have to excuse my yawning. I always yawn on these videos. I can go all day without yawning, and as soon as I start doing a video, I start yawning. So the tapping that I shared in the last video, tapping on the top of your head, light tapping, just constant tapping, tap, 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 and then tapping on your forehead or your third eye, tapping on your chest, your heart chakra, and then tapping just above your belly button, so on your solar plexus. And while you're tapping, you say this. So start on top of the head. While tapping, I am willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to release the shame I feel about my life in all my lifetimes. And then move to the forehead and start tapping. I am willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to remove the shame I feel about my life in all my lifetimes. And then moving down to the heart. I am willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to remove the shame I feel about my life in all my lifetimes. And then moving down to the solar plexus, tapping. I am willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to release the shame that I feel about my life in all my lifetimes. And then a big deep breath. And another aspect of that, go back to tapping at the beginning. After each time, go to the next tapping, starting on top of the head. I'm willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to accept all the shame I've experienced in all my lifetimes. The forehead, I'm willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to accept all the shame I've experienced in all my lifetimes. Down to the heart, I am willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to accept all the shame I've experienced in all my lifetimes. And down to the solar plexus, I am willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to accept all the shame I've experienced in all my lifetimes. Big deep breath in. And then you want to replace it with something. This is what I'm replacing it with. Starting tapping on top of the head. I'm willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to embrace accepting all parts of myself in all my lifetimes. Forehead, I am willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to accept all parts of myself in all my lifetimes. Down to the chest, I am willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to accept all parts of myself in all my lifetimes. And then down to the solar plexus, I am willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to accept all parts of myself in all my lifetimes. For me, this journey has been about awareness, acknowledgement, so acknowledging what I've been aware of, acceptance, accepting what I've become aware of and what I've acknowledged. And depending on the situation, either forgiveness or love, or forgiveness and love. But awareness is the start. It's the starting point. If you're not aware of your stuff, if you're not aware of what you're feeling, if you're not aware of what your blocks are and your sabotages are, it's a good place to start. It's not an easy journey. It is not an easy journey. It is so much easier to stick your head in the sand and follow some other process, work hard, push, keep pushing aside the emotions and keep going, keep striving, keep striving. I wish I could do that. That would be great. I wish I could just keep striving and achieving and creating. But my journey has been about unraveling and becoming acutely aware of my stuff. I think I shared in one of the first videos that can be an addiction, that there can actually end up being an addiction to dealing with your stuff. The trauma becomes the addiction. So I've also been looking at that. But I feel like I've turned a corner, if I can use that phrase. Because now, not only am I doing videos, but now I'm also sharing what I do, which I've not ever done before. That's a big deal for me, to be not only doing videos, but also sharing my process. That noise was a cat jumping off something onto something. For whatever reason, I don't feel like I can dig any deeper at the moment with doing any more tapping. It really is just one piece at a time at the moment. It's been a long time since I've cleared or released or done any kind of energy work. It's been a long time since I've done any kind of tapping. And I can feel that if I go too hard, too fast, then it can create a massive discord in my energy, and then I have to deal with that. Whereas back when I first started doing this, back when I first created it, I would sit for hours tapping, hours. I would get to the point where my head, top of my head was so sore because I'd constantly tapping that I'd then start tapping above my head. And then I got to the point where I could tap without actually even having to tap. I could just visualize it. I was tapping so much. But now, because it's been such a long time, I'm also a little bit more fragile in my energy field and in my center. It's a little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit, just little bits at a time. Being very careful, very gentle, very slow. Oh, sorry for all the yawning. And that's what I'd suggest to you too. If you don't usually do a lot of energy work, or you're not used to doing a lot of clearing work, or you're not used to doing internal work, take it easy. You don't have to rush. Take it easy. Go slow. Honor what you need. Honor what your body needs. I think I ignored my body when I first started doing this. I just wanted to do it and go through the layers and the layers and the layers, and I did. And it has thankfully brought me to a position where I'm so acutely aware of everything now. But it was long. It was because no one else was doing this work back then. No one was doing this work. People were tapping, but not like this. People were tapping and doing EFT, but it's different. No one was doing the deep shadow clearing work back when I started doing this work. So everything that I did, I had to figure out myself. I had to follow my own journey, my own path. There's one person I found that started doing shadow work, and I followed him for a while, and that was really good. But I kind of had to find my own way. And now that I'm doing it again from a completely different perspective, from the perspective of being a mum, which brings up all sorts of other things, from the perspective of now having no parents, both of my parents passing away, having no family, it's a different perspective. I can dive into things that I couldn't dive into before. Not while my mum was alive. I would never discuss her addiction openly while she was alive. I would never actively humiliate her in that way when she was alive. She's gone now. She doesn't care. There's no one left to care about the fact that I talk about my mum's alcoholism. But I would never have done it while she was alive. There are not that many people in my life that knew my mum had a drinking problem when she was alive, because I just didn't want to dishonor her in that way. And so now I can deal with layers that I couldn't deal with before. I'm also a mum. That brings up all new sets of layers that weren't here before, that didn't exist before. So now I can deal with that. Now I was just looking to check and make sure that my phone was still recording, because I'm almost out of memory on my phone. So yeah, it's, you can go hard at it. You can do it for hours and hours and hours every day, and anyone that wants to, I would definitely happily support anyone that wants to go hard at it. Or you can take it easy. It depends on your situation. Depends on where you are in your life. It depends on how determined you are to clear your stuff. It really depends on your situation. If you're like me, where you're too where it's too traumatic. Sorry, a cat just jumped up on the bed. If you're like me, where it's too traumatic to go digging deep, it's too intense. Don't do it. Do a little bit and then integrate. Do a little bit and then integrate. Do a little bit and then integrate. It's important to take that time to integrate the change and the shift. And for me, I can feel, even though shame is something I'd already worked on, I can still feel there's been a shift. I can still feel there's a change. And I don't want to do any more than that. I don't want to pack on too many more layers, because I can feel that needs time to integrate. So I highly suggest taking the time to integrate the little bits that you do each time. And there's no need to hurry. There's no need to rush. This is definitely not a race. There's no win here. You're not beating anybody. This is just you against you. And I kind of think that's it tonight. I that and then see what happens. Thanks for watching.